This video covers section 1.3, sampling methods, and the objective is to understand the different sampling methods. So in statistics, we have different kinds of sampling techniques. We could conduct a census, which is a count or measure of an entire population. Taking a census provides complete information, but it's often really costly and difficult to perform. So that's why in the United States, we take a census every 10 years to find out how many people live in a household, the income of the household, how many children there are, the household's races, to do a full count of how many people live in America. But it takes a lot of time and it costs a lot of money. So doing a census on a population is usually not what we do in statistics. What we usually do is we take a sample. A sample is a count or measure of part of a population. We usually take samples of a population and make inferences about the entire population. It's just a lot more cost effective and it doesn't take as much time. In statistics, we need to know good ways to sample people. Now, this information is not in your textbook, but it's really important for you to know because you're going to be performing the internal assessment for my class, and it's expected that you know the appropriate ways to sample a population. And the IB people get really impressed if you comment on how you did sample a population. They think very highly of IAs where students took the time to create a good sample. So we're going to take some time and talk about different ways that you can sample a population. The first way is a simple random sample. A random sample is one in which every member of the population has an equal chance of being selected. So when we collect a simple random sample, what we do is we number everybody in the population, 1 through whatever. So maybe if we're doing a random sample on the yellow tie class, we would number them 1 through 40. And then we use some sort of tool to help us pick randomly from that group. So there's something called a random number table. So that's one way we could do it, but we won't do that in this class. There's also some computer software programs that allow you to pick random numbers. And we're not going to do that in this class either. What we're going to do is we're going to use our calculator to come up with a list of random numbers. So a simple random sample is often the best way to sample a population. But there's other ways to sample populations. So let's talk about those techniques. One way of sampling a population is by stratified sampling. When it's important for the sample to have members from each segment of a population, you should use stratified sampling. So what stratified sampling is we divide the population into different groups called strata that share a similar characteristic, and then we randomly select a group from each of that strata. So how it could work at Annie Wright School is we can divide the upper school into different tie colors. So we can have the green ties, we can have blue ties, we can have red ties, and we can have yellow ties. So we have all those 4 groups already with similar characteristics, being that they're from the same class, and then you randomly select within those groups or strata. So using a stratified sample ensures that each segment of the population is represented, and that would be a really good tool if you were sampling the upper school. The next kind of sampling method is cluster sampling. Cluster sampling is when you take the population and it's in some naturally occurring clusters or groups, then you select all of the members in one or more, but not all of them because then it would be a census, and then you ask all of the members in one of the groups a question, or you survey them. So often it's used when we're already naturally divided into zip codes, and so if we have Washington State and we're in zip codes, so Annie Wright School is in the 98403 zip code, and what they do is they ask every single person that lives in the 98403 zip code a question, and maybe everybody in the 98516 zip code a question, but they don't ask anybody else in the state of Washington. The difference between cluster sampling and stratified sampling, if we're thinking about tie colors, if we do have the blue ties, the green ties, the red, and the yellow, when we did stratified, we sampled in each of these groups, but if we're doing cluster, then we're maybe talking to every green tie and then maybe every yellow tie, and then we're not talking to any of the blue or any of the red ties. There's some problems with this kind of sampling method. For instance, if we do a cluster sampling with the zip codes, different zip codes have greater proportions of higher income or lower income people, and so the data might not be representative of the entire population that we're interested in. Okay, the next kind of sampling is systematic sampling. And systematic sampling is when you assign each member of the population a number, and then you pick a random number, and then you ask every, maybe let's say every fifth person that walks out of Starbucks the same question. So it could be every fifth person, it could be every third person, it could be every 100th person that you ask. But there's some sort of system where you're just asking the same question or doing the same survey to every kth subject. So if I'm doing the study that I was talking about, like with Starbucks, and you wanted to ask them what their coffee drinking habits are, you wanted to ask every fifth person, then you're going to ignore the first, second, third, fourth, and then once the fifth person comes, you're going to ask them their question. This is my question. And then you're going to talk to them, and then you're going to wait another 5 people, so not this person, not this person, not this person, not this person, but oh, here we go, here's the next fifth person. You're going to ask them their question. Then you're going to ask this person your question. So that's systematic sampling. One advantage of systematic sampling is that it's really easy to use. We don't need to number the entire population. We just pick a number and then randomly survey or look at that number. The disadvantage is that there could be a regularly occurring pattern in the data where, like, maybe we're looking at an assembly line and we're checking to make sure that the batteries that we are producing work, and if we check every 5th battery and it doesn't work, well, it could be that every 5th time that the machine makes the battery, it doesn't work, but all the other ones, they do work. The last kind of sampling method is convenience sampling, and this is bad. B-A-D. This is the bad kind of sampling. It often leads to a lot of biased studies. It's not recommended at all. Basically, you're just sampling available members in your population. Way that you could do convenience sampling is if I wanted to know what teenage girls' use of Facebook is, I could just go log into Facebook and then just ask all of my friends on my friend list that are girls what their Facebook usage is, and that's not really a good sampling method. You're just asking your friends, which probably, I don't know, maybe they have the same habits as you, so it's just not a good way to sample from a population. The last thing I wanted to talk about in this video is the error and the bias that can happen when we're sampling. So even with some of those best methods of sampling, we can have a sampling error. A sampling error is a difference between the results of a sample and those of the population. So if you take statistics in college, you'll learn about different inferential statistics where you can control those sampling errors. We won't get to that in this class, but it is out there. And a biased sample would be a sample that isn't representative of the population from which it is drawn. So maybe if we did ask people that were walking out of Starbucks their coffee drinking habits, well, that's kind of a biased sample because they're obviously drinking coffee because they are leaving Starbucks. So maybe it would have been better to go to a grocery store and ask those people their coffee drinking habits, or maybe randomly selecting people and calling them on the phone. But if you're only asking people that happen to be at a coffee shop, it's probably not representative of the entire population that you're trying to represent. So that's my little lesson on sampling methods. If you have any questions, come and see me. Thanks.